The losing streak continues as the Indianapolis Colts fell to the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville for a ninth straight year. Do we still have confidence that Gardner Minshew can lead this offense with Anthony Richardson possibly on the shelf for the rest of the year? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here by my fellow writer, analyst, and soon-to-be father, Drake Wally. Congrats to Drake and his beautiful fiance, Aubrey. Drake announced today that he is having a baby girl, so everyone give it up to Drake Wally in the chat here. We also really appreciate the chat for sticking with us as we go through our technical difficulties this evening. It seems like everything that has to deal with the Indianapolis Colts has had some difficulties over the past 48 hours. But Drake, it's good to see you, buddy, and congratulations. I've known for a few months now about this, guys, but congrats to Drake. You're going to be a hell of a father.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. It's going to be a wild ride. I'm really excited, but I even posted it out on X. Nobody worry. She's already a Colts fan. Okay, so don't worry anybody. But yeah, hey, this game was bad in a lot of ways, and we'll be going over even some good things that we saw. But I think this was a humbling experience for a young Colts team, and it kind of showed Shane Steichen that despite Gardner Minshew being a solid backup, there might be some additional things he needs to tweak up in that offense with him starting.
Yeah, exactly. We'll dive into all of that. We'll dive into what we saw in the game, Gardner Minshew's performance, obviously. We'll dive into the latest dealing with Anthony Richardson and his shoulder injury. It's going to be a hell of a show tonight. And starting it out with our first super chat, of course, it's the CFO of Horseshoe Huddle, Patrick Rye, for diapers and open bars. Patrick starts us off with an absolute heater. Thanks a lot, Patrick, for all of your support. We really do appreciate it. Truitt says he's not going to be on tonight because he's bummed about the Colts. It's okay, Truitt. This is a safe place. This is where you get out your frustrations about the Indianapolis Colts. Stats Matt bringing in the sarcasm. The sky is falling. Shane is Reich 2.0. The defense lost the game. Juju stunk. Kenny stunk. Shaq is stuck in the mud. Oh wait, I'm not that dumb. That's all false. So a lot of hot takes going on today. I even saw in the chat that Patrick was talking about how he had his overreaction tweet was on the Pat McAfee show this afternoon. So good for Patrick there. You're not getting a close personal friend with Pat McAfee. Shout out to Pat McAfee because I chugged a beer with him one time at a minor league baseball game, and I'll always hold that over Brandon Moses's head. But hey, thanks a lot to everybody who is here, getting ready to talk Colts with us tonight. Jacob says, "Welcome to the Girl Dad Club, Drake." And yeah, it's gonna be pretty awesome. So before we dive in, please, if you stuck with us through our technical difficulties, you probably have already liked all of our things on social media. But if you haven't, go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on Twitter, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up Show, so you never miss an episode. And if you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review. So Drake, without any further ado, let's dive into the week 6 action. The Colts were embarrassed by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Really no other way to put it. 37-20 on Sunday. Thought that the Colts might have a chance. Thought that this would be a closer game than it was, but when you turn the ball over 4 times, you let the Jaguars get out to a 31-6 lead, Drake, it's going to be pretty tough to be able to come back from that. So before we really dive into specifics, just give me your overall thoughts of the game, from offense, defense, everything. What did you come away from that game yesterday thinking about this Colts team?
Man, I did think that it would be closer. I thought it was a game they could win. And I think that we were both kind of like, along the lines that, hey, this is going to be a close game. I think you were in favor of the Jags. I was in favor of the Colts. But what ensued was not what I expected. I expected more ground more of a ground game. Now I know that Ryan Kelly and some others, gave an explanation. There were certain personnel sets. Well, I argue that sometimes in the run game you have to absolutely establish your will. You have to break the will of the other team at times. You have to be very physical, and you just have to punch them in the mouth. That's the personality, I think, of this offense. But I think that we saw that when you have a full week to prepare for Gardner Minshew, and you can't get the ground game going, and you don't take shots downfield, he's someone that you can easily prepare for with those short passes. And really, Jacksonville, I think they constantly said it on the broadcast, they don't have to leave their base set, and they don't really have to try very hard outside of what they're familiar with.
It was really interesting to see how, especially when you go back and look at the film, the Colts would come out in a 4 wide receiver set, or in 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end out wide. And usually that's a situation when you come out and at least your nickel, a lot of times your dime set on the defense. Jaguars came out in 11 personnel, which means they had 3 linebackers and 4 defensive backs on the field. So and they dared Gardner Minshew to beat them and throw to guys, and it simply just could not happen. They were bound and determined to not allow the Colts running game to get off the ground and to get rolling. And credit to the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. They played a hell of a game and just made it very, very tough on the Colts to really do anything on offense. Shout out to Shaheen. Shaheen is back with a $5 super chat. Really appreciate it, Shaheen. He says, congrats, Drake.
Thank
and
you.
Juju looks legit out there. Oh, we're going to talk about Juju Brents because
yeah.
he certainly saw a lot of hate on Juju Brents. I wouldn't say a lot, but there were some people out there, some talking that Juju Brents didn't have a good game. Beg to differ. And I'll make sure to get into that. Have another super chat from Sarah, our loyal supporter, Sarah, saying, congrats, Drake, girl dad, and go Colts. Sarah has always been a loyal supporter of us here at the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. So thank you to Sarah. Thank you to Shaheen for the super chats. You guys are the real MVPs. So let's talk about Gardner Minshew, Drake. Gardner Minshew put up 55 passes yesterday, 33 of 55 for 329 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and a fumble loss. The first multi-interception game of Gardner Minshew's career yesterday. Of course, it happens when he's in a Colts uniform and in Jacksonville. Seems like everything goes wrong for a player when that happens. But to me, in my honest opinion, it looked like Gardner Minshew was really trying to push, and that's not what the Colts need out of a Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is supposed to be the field general, the distributor, but it seemed like in a lot of these circumstances, Gardner Minshew really tried to push and in a sense put the team on his back to lead this offense. And I mean, yes, we've really sung Gardner Minshew's praises this year, and rightfully so, because he has came in and played well for the most part when his number has been called, when Anthony Richardson has gone down. And that's why we say, he's one of the best backups, if not the best backup quarterback in the NFL. But that's the thing. He's the best backup quarterback in the NFL. He excels as a backup. He's a very high-end backup, but if you're going to rely him to win games for you solely on the back of Gardner Minshew's performance, you're not going to win very many games. And that's just being truthful about the situation.
Yeah, and in this type of offense, he benefits from the running game. He benefits from the short passing game, the RPO game. Now, I will say, like you mentioned, 55 passes for a guy like Gardner Minshew, for any quarterback, that is a lot of throwing. But for a backup quarterback, and on top of that, it's a quarterback that really does need a ground game. That's just too many attempts. And like you said, sometimes he was very un-Minshew-like. He was trying to force the ball in places he didn't need to. He threw 3 interceptions, one of which he threw off his back foot when it could have been a potential touchdown. He didn't really level into the throw. He didn't step into it at all. Some very uncharacteristic decisions from Gardner Minshew. But hey, the sky, I think Stats Matt was joking earlier. He had some sarcasm. The sky is definitely not falling. This is one game. It's like you said, for him to be in the league this long and never throw more than a pick in a game, that's incredibly impressive. So I think there's some bounce back to be had. But if we're talking about just this game, yeah, very rough showing, 4 total turnovers from the mustached one.
Right, and the thing is, credit to the Jacksonville defense, and this is kind of all ties into one here. We talked about it last week that the Colts were going to need to rely on the running game going up against this Jacksonville defense, so that way you didn't put too much pressure in and too much of the onus to win this game on the back of Gardner Minshew. But instead, you come out and you have to throw it 55 times because of just how the Jacksonville defense was playing. And obviously the way Gardner Minshew played yesterday was unacceptable. Those interceptions that he threw, two of them were ducks. The other one was he was kind of falling away and throwing off his back foot, sensing the pressure really before it was there, and it just threw it up way too short when he was trying to go to the back of the end zone for Michael Pittman Jr. and it barely reached the front of the end zone. Just two very easy interceptions. The strip sack fumble, I don't really put that on Minshew. I mean, does Anthony Richardson fumble that? Probably not, but Anthony Richardson's also a freak athlete. Gardner Minshew didn't see it coming. Josh Allen made a hell of a play on Bernard Ryman and to get around him and go after the football. But that's just something that's still that he needs to be more aware of. Shout out to my beautiful wife Danielle for her nightly super sticker
Woo!
on the evening. Really appreciate it. And shout out to my wife. Number one, she's just a beautiful woman. Number two, fantastic cook. She comes home from dealing with kindergartners all day, makes me a great dinner before I come on here and yap about the Colts for an hour. So shout out to my beautiful wife Danielle for always supporting me in whatever I do. But yeah, Drake, and really when you throw three interceptions and have 4 total turnovers by your quarterback, I don't really think it makes a difference if the running game got going or not. Even if the Colts ran for 200 yards, it's hard to come back from 4 turnovers by your quarterback.
Well, yeah, and the Jaguars were also hitting the short game really well. They were doing their typical thing of just throwing really short, quick passes. I think multiple times Calvin really exposed the zone defense. Etienne was going on the ground. I mean, you can't turn the ball over against any NFL team like that, but especially a team that honestly has a top 10 level offense on any given Sunday. So the Colts are going to learn from that, and I think that you've seen that if you push Gardner Minshew past 40 attempts and he's trying to do things that aren't comfortable for him, he goes against what makes him valuable and he starts turning the ball over. So I think that you're going to see some changes, maybe some early shots, maybe earlier in this next week's game against the Browns. But yeah, definitely a lot to digest. And there's some silver linings from some lessons that can be learned offensively in this game.
And I think now there's a blueprint for how you beat this Colts team
Yeah.
and really stall out this Colts offense until they can prove otherwise. And looking at the running game, we'll just dive right into it. There was a struggle for the Indianapolis Colts running the football. 44 yards, 2.6 yard per carry average. Zach Moss, who had 165 yards a week ago, 21 yards. Former All-Pro running back Jonathan Taylor, second game back after returning from that ankle injury, 19 yards on the ground. So, but Drake, here's the thing, and I've seen a lot of talk on social media from fans saying, we got to run the ball, we got to get the ground game going, and that is true. I do think that the Colts need to be better running the football, but at the same time, those guys on the other side get paid to play football too. And I touched on this a little bit. The Jaguars were in their base 11 personnel. And I went through the film this afternoon, just kind of prepping for talking about this on the show tonight and seeing how the Jaguars defense was lining up. So many times the Jaguars have 7 men in the box and playing very, very close to the line of scrimmage. You're not going to be able to run through that. I don't really care who you are, unless you're the Eagles maybe with that offensive line, but it's very tough to do that. Not only that, but then when you look at how the situation that the Colts were in, before the Colts were even able to run their second play after scoring that field goal, because the first play of their second drive was the Gardner Minshew fumble. The Colts were already down 14-3, and at some point, once it gets to 21-3, you can't really just continue to try to rely and get a running game going, because by that time, if you're too busy trying to work on a running game when the defense isn't allowing that, you're not going to be you're pretty soon you're going to find yourself way behind. So you got to throw yourself back into the game. And again, credit the Jaguars defense. They did a phenomenal job making the Colts one-dimensional throughout this whole thing. They made it a point. We are not going to allow you guys to run on us. You're going to have to beat us through the air with Gardner Minshew's arm. And then once you get into the second half and you're facing a 28-3 or 28-6, 31-6 deficit, you can't be saying, run the damn ball, because that's going to take 8 minutes off the clock and you're not going to get back into the game. You got to get quick passes and passes farther down the field to get back into the game. So I think two things can be true at once. We're the Colts, or maybe three things. Yes, the Colts were pretty bad at running the football yesterday. Yes, the Jacksonville Jaguars did a hell of a job dictating what the Colts could do on offense. And there really wasn't an opportunity to get the running game going in the second half, because the Colts had to throw to even get back into the game.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is when you do have a team that really does rely on that ground game and you get them behind, it is not easy for them to climb back into the game, especially when they don't have their starting quarterback. And that's the thing about Richardson and Minshew, is that, yes, Minshew's safe. He's accurate. He knows the offense. He's been doing this for a while and he's low turnover. But when it comes to the ground game, Richardson could get that ground game going if you're down 14, 17 points, because he's so ridiculously talented that he could break a run. He could open up a run for Jonathan Taylor. You're just not going to get that with Gardner Minshew. He had 2 carries for 4 yards, and he worked real hard for those 4 yards. Okay, so it's just a totally different animal when you're facing the Colts. And like you said, I think that you're going to see maybe even some drastic changes offensively with this upcoming opponent that the Colts have, that just took P.J. Walker to defeat the San Francisco 49ers. You're going to see, I think, some changes offensively, because like you said, until the Colts present something different, teams have the perfect blueprint on how to stop them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This isn't a Shane Steichen thing. I want to be perfectly clear on that. There was nothing Shane Steichen could do yesterday, play calling wise, that would have changed this. Shane Steichen isn't out there throwing 3 interceptions and losing a fumble. Okay, that's on Gardner Minshew. It'd be different if those turnovers weren't a thing. If Gardner Minshew wasn't turning the football over, then maybe, and the game stays closer, you can get the running game going to open things up with the pass. You can try to attack that more. But when you find yourself in that big of a hole that early, you at some point you have to get the passing game. Really, that's your only shot at trying to come back and win this. And the Colts had some opportunities, because the running game wasn't working. It's not like the Colts weren't trying to get their playmakers involved. Shane Steichen called a beautiful play where he puts Jonathan Taylor out wide. He comes over on a crossing route. Minshew puts it right on him. And then you can use that home run speed of Jonathan Taylor, takes it 40 yards down the field. I think it was either a couple plays later or the very next play. It might have been a couple plays later. Gardner Minshew throws an interception right over the top of Michael Pittman. Just a terrible throw, and it's easily intercepted. Then there was the throw downfield to Michael Pittman Jr. Soon as that happens, another interception by Gardner Minshew. Kylan Granson with a huge play down the field. A couple plays later, Gardner Minshew, an interception. So it's like you one step forward, 2 steps back. That was just how the offense was for the Indianapolis Colts yesterday. And then I saw some more slander about the wide receivers. And don't look now, Drake. And I know some people don't want to hear this. Wide receivers played pretty good, especially Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs. Shout out to Josh Downs getting his first career touchdown yesterday. So Michael Pittman, 9 catches for 109 yards, all over the place, even though he was fighting through double teams for most of the game. The Michael Pittman doubters don't want to talk about that, but Pittman faced double teams for much of the contest yesterday. Alec Pierce can't catch a football. Man, he sure just that one arm right behind his head caught that thing. He only had 25 yards, but they were doubling Alec Pierce too. They were saying, you know what? We're going to force Gardner Minshew to try to do something on us here. Josh Downs, 5 catches, 21 yards in his first touchdown. The wide receivers overall, I thought played pretty good considering the circumstances and considering the Jacksonville Jaguars threw a lot of double teams their way, especially to Michael Pittman Jr.
Yeah, and I think that their numbers get lost outside of Pittman's. A lot of people just probably didn't even look their way because it was such a bad performance overall. The score looks lopsided. The running game stunk. Minshew turned it over 4 times, 3 through the air. You don't really look at stats when you see your team absolutely get crushed like that. But Pittman had a season high in targets. He had 14. He had a season high in receiving yards. He had 109. I mean, Downs didn't have all the yards that you want, but he had another 5 catches. And sometimes as a slot receiver, you're going to have low yardage games, but he still grabbed a touchdown. And then Alec Pierce, like you said, first off, that was a terrible throw. And the pressure was right in Minshew's face. He still snags it, ends up hurting his shoulder later in the game. But something that I've heard a couple of people mention about Alec Pierce that are willing to say it is that the dude's been blocking his ass off. He really has. He's been one of the most effective blockers downfield. So the wide receivers are coming into their own, and even Isaiah McKenzie had a couple good plays. So they tried, man. They really did give their best effort. It's just when you're limited, and like you said, the defense can dictate what your quarterback's going to do and your offensive play caller, a la Shane Steichen. It's going to make it way harder on you. So it actually should be praised that Michael Pittman was able to grab 5 balls in between those 3 guys. I mean, you had 17 catches, so not a bad day at all given the circumstances.
It wasn't, and that's why I think. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. right now, I think he's on pace for like 113 catches and 1,100 or 1,200 yards, something like that. Michael Pittman's off to a very good season in a contract year, nonetheless. And I think there's going to be. I mean, if you're a listener to this show, I know most people who do listen to our show believe that Michael Pittman Jr. is a wide receiver one and has the talent to be that. But those doubters out there, when they see what Michael Pittman Jr. gets, they're probably going to be a little surprised. The type of dollars that he gets this offseason. I know it's a loaded wide receiver class that's coming in, but don't be surprised if the Colts are shelling out $20 million a year for Michael Pittman's services for the next 4 to 5 years. So, and honestly, I would do that deal in a heartbeat. So the wide receivers I thought did well, and this is where this game kind of takes just such a weird turn. It was just such a weird game in general, but the defense, you look at the stat sheet and you say, well, before we do that, we've got an absolute monster. Stop the presses, an absolute monster of a super chat from the CFO Patrick here. $20 super chat, buddy. You are
gonna have to sell him the rights to Horseshoe Huddle at some point.
You are too kind. Patrick says Colts crossed a threshold Sunday. If they won with Minshew are in first today, I think they do go out to get Judy and get serious about a playoff run. But they're still good enough to not have a fire sale and a mid first round pick. And that's kind of where the Colts sit right now. And it's going to be interesting, especially these next few weeks, especially when they do make a final decision on surgery or not for Anthony Richardson's shoulder, is where this Colts team stands. And I don't think they're going to do a fire sale, even if this Colts team was started to lose more games as we get to the trade deadline, because I think they saw glimpses of what this Colts team can be with Anthony Richardson out there. And turns out it's a pretty damn good team. So when you're talking about guys like DeForest Buckner, who isn't going anywhere, Shaq Leonard, who isn't going anywhere. By the way, Shaq Leonard played his best game of the season yesterday. If you weren't seeing 53 fly around the field making tackles, looking like his old self, I think the way Kenny Moore is playing, Kenny Moore is earning himself a deal. I don't think the Colts want to give that away, seeing how he's playing, seeing with Juju Brents especially. I just don't see the Colts in selling mode right now. They have their building blocks in place. They're just waiting for the quarterback to catch up, and as the quarterback catches up, as Anthony Richardson gets healthy, whether it's this year or next year, this team's going to be just fine. I mean, sure, they do have pieces to add. You definitely probably want a little bit more talent at wide receiver. Definitely need to add some talent at cornerback, probably. Safety, definitely an area that should be looked at. But this team isn't as far off as a lot of people think. Yes, it was a bad game in Jacksonville, but as Patrick says, it's not time to sell everything. So thank you so much, Patrick, for your support and for your very nuanced takes. Like, Patrick is a menace in the chat with his jokes, but he's also a very intelligent football fan. So really appreciate all of your support, buddy. But Drake, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. And as I was saying, this is where things get kind of weird. It says the Colts gave up 37 points, but in all, I think they only gave up like 233, 237, one of those two numbers, total yards on the ground. Because of the amount of turnovers and everything, this Colts defense just faced a lot of short fields and was on the field quite a bit yesterday. But especially in that second half, this defense stepped it up when they weren't having to constantly deal with the short fields. And we're going to talk about a guy that I think stood out the most on the defensive side of the ball. Rookie Juju Brents, a hell of a day for the second round pick out of Kansas State and Indianapolis native.
Yeah, and look, man, Juju Brents, he's making the Colts really look smart for that trade so far. I mean, he's got a fumble forced. He had 7 tackles in this game. He's got an interception. He's only played 3 games, and he's doing all this. Well, wait, 4?
Yesterday was
4 games.
Start,
yes. Okay, that's right, because he's debuted in Baltimore. So Juju Brents is showing that he's got a seriously high upside. I think that his athleticism mixed with his ball instincts, mixed with just his reactions on the field, they're all just trending upward. And despite the fact that I know that, like you mentioned, a lot of people are pretty upset with this game. A lot of people have murmured about that they don't want Gus Bradley as the defensive coordinator. Look, it is one game. Okay, when your quarterback turns the ball over and you're on your own 40 freaking yard line, good luck for any defensive coordinator of any merit to stop 37 points when you have Jacksonville's offense on the other side of that ball. Okay, it's not easy. Like Andrew said, it puts your defense in terrible spots. So, but man, Juju Brents, at the end of the day, I really like where he's at. I think that the time off really helped him, and I think that you're starting to see one hell of a defensive back, and mixed with, Kenny Moore and Jalen Jones even played pretty decent. I mean, man, that young core's starting to look good.
And the thing about Juju Brent's journey this season as well, especially over the last few games, you've kind of seen really who he's gone up against. First game he was going up a lot of times against Zay Flowers, really kept Zay Flowers in check. I think against the Rams he wasn't matched up too much on Puka Nacua. I'd have to really go back and look at the film, but against the Tennessee Titans, multiple times staying across from DeAndre Hopkins and was pestering DeAndre Hopkins, made some good plays there. In this game, who was primarily on Calvin Ridley? It was Juju Brents, and yes, I think Juju got caught in no man's land on the touchdown to Christian Kirk. Rookie. It happens.
It's expected.
But exactly. He's not going to be perfect. But in that second half, you saw Juju Brents lock down Calvin Ridley, being physical with the wide receivers. Also coming up and being physical at the line of scrimmage, going after Travis Etienne, getting some tackles back there. And of course, being in the right place in the right time, getting that first career interception off of Trevor Lawrence. So, it just seems like the more he plays, the more he gets, the more comfortable he's becoming in this defense. And you don't see him make a lot of mistakes twice. And he's got a short memory, which is what you need for a cornerback. So Juju Brent's really starting to come on, and for the Colts to trade back in that second round and still come up with Juju Brents, who is really on pace to be one of the outside starters at cornerback for the Colts for a long time if this keeps progressing. It's really cool to see him kind of coming into his own in real time and really showing what he's got in this Colts defense. It's a big fan of seeing what Juju Brents has done so far and what he's going to do in the future.
Well, and it really gets you excited because 6'4" corners don't just grow off of trees in the NFL. Okay, they present huge problems, especially for passing football teams. But the guy also makes some run defense plays. So I like what I see from Juju Brents. Kansas State product looks pretty damn good so far.
Yeah, and I think if you want to pinpoint an area that the defense really struggled yesterday, maybe it could be the pass rush. I know the Colts got 3 sacks, one by
Mhm.
Samson Ebukam. DeForest Buckner was back there. I think Tyquan Lewis was the other one. But Trevor Lawrence still had some success, 20 of 30 for 181 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. But it's not like Trevor Lawrence went off by any means. This kind of really all goes back to the turnovers and the bad play of Gardner Minshew is really what put this Colts team behind the 8 ball. And I don't want to feel like I'm picking on Gardner Minshew because he even acknowledged it after the game that this was on him. But when you look at the defensive side of the ball, yes, they scored 37 points, but at the same time, I mean, Trevor Lawrence didn't exactly go off in this game, and it was just a very weird game from the defensive side of the ball. And I keep coming back to that. But normally when you think, 37 points, you're thinking Trevor Lawrence probably went for 350 and 3 tuds. Colts kept him in check, Drake.
Yeah, and you got to think in their first meeting, 24 completions, 241 yards, didn't light it up then. Well, in this one, they had 6 less points, and he had 181 yards off of 20 completions. He didn't even cross 200 passing yards. This is a passing offense. Oh, and also Travis Etienne averaged 3.1 yards per carry. He had 55 rushing yards. He made his bread in that game through the Gardner Minshew turnover, turned right around, ran a 22-yard touchdown in, and then the offense is right back out there. So the numbers will lie to you in this game. It was those turnovers and where they were at on the field when they happened that gave Jacksonville those 37 points. I think they had like 17 points off of turnovers or something absolutely bonkers like that.
And that's honestly where the game was made and lost, Drake. It was the 17 points off the turnovers. And sometimes football can be a very simple game. 17 points off turnovers. How much did the Colts lose by yesterday? 17. So the turnovers made all the difference. When you lose the turnover battle in that type of fashion, like the Colts did yesterday, again, it does not matter if the Colts ran for 200 yards on the day. When you turn the ball over 4 times, you're not going to win very many football games, and that's something that we're just not used to with Gardner Minshew because he protects the football so well, because he makes such great decisions most of the time. So when you combine that together and put that on top of a quarterback that really just doesn't have the ability to elevate an offense or to overcome those mistakes and those turnovers, you're gonna get what you got yesterday. And Stats Matt brings up a fantastic point. Colts gave up under 240 yards of offense, limited the Jaguars to 6 of 14 on third down and 6 3-and-outs. 4 opposing drives started in scoring territory. The defense was just fine. And he says, add in the 3 points off the kick return. Also, 2 of the turnovers were in field goal range. So Stats Matt bringing out all of the stats from
Awesome.
yesterday's game. When 17 points off those turnovers, that's really what it comes down to. And I don't think we're going to see another 3 interception game, another 4 turnover game by Gardner Minshew. But as you alluded to earlier, Drake, Gardner Minshew just isn't the type of quarterback that can really elevate an offense. Gardner Minshew isn't the type of quarterback you win because of. You can win with Gardner Minshew out there as long as the other parts are all in sync and working together. But Gardner Minshew isn't going to go out and overcome a deficit or overcome some self-inflicted mistakes in order to win you a football game.
Well, yeah, and at the end of the day, he is a backup quarterback. But like everybody, like you just mentioned, everybody that's worried about those turnovers, this is his first multi-interception game in his career with arguably the best, well, outside of the Eagles, the best team he's had with the best play caller he's had, and he's got some dynamite in the backfield with him. So give him time, give him a moment to bounce back from this. It was a very uncharacteristic performance, but again, it does give teams at least something to go off of on how to defeat him.
And it doesn't get any easier
Nope.
next week. In
No.
Indianapolis, the Colts are facing the Cleveland Browns. And I know some people might say, well, it's just the Browns. Well, currently the Browns defense is on a historic pace to being one of the best defenses we have seen in the last 50 years. It is going to take a ginormous effort from this Colts offense in order to get the best of a Cleveland Browns defense that is absolutely humming on all cylinders. So let's move to the injury report. So we do have some injuries to talk about, and obviously most notably Anthony Richardson and what's going on with his shoulder. So it was reported by Ian Rappaport early Sunday morning before the Colts took on the Jaguars that the Colts and Anthony Richardson are seriously considering season-ending surgery to that right shoulder injury. He suffered a grade 3 AC joint sprain in the win over the Tennessee Titans. And if it's gonna come to that, then that might just be what Colts fans have to deal with it. So Drake, right move, do you think, to get the surgery, or is it a certain circumstance? Would it be the right move? Circumstance, would it be the wrong move? What are your thoughts on Richardson possibly getting this season-ending surgery?
I think that if they are incredibly confident that, hey, you know what, you're good, you're not going to have any risk of long-term damage going out there in 2023 at week blah 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 blah, whatever, week blank, go for it, absolutely. But I would go on the side of, if his shoulder and his long-term future will benefit from the surgery, it's imperative. You have to do it. You have to eat it as a Colts fan and accept it. This has happened with guys like Allen. This has happened with guys like Stafford. They went on to become, especially Matt Stafford, freaking Iron Men in the NFL. You just have to give him time, okay? And he's a rookie who had limited experience coming into this. He was running over guys in college. He had to get used to these guys in the NFL, and they taught him a little bit of a lesson. And so it's just one of those things where he's a young quarterback that's mobile. I know Jake Arthur said this on Locked On Colts in one of his episodes. This is what you're going to get sometimes, okay, with mobile quarterbacks. So I think that if they really think that it's going to help him long term to where he won't have to worry about this ever again, make the surgery happen, shut him down for the long term.
And I think Colts fans just aren't used to this because this is the first time the Colts have really had a true dual threat quarterback. I mean, yes, Andrew Luck could move and create with his legs. Carson Wentz could create with his legs, but not nearly to the extent of Anthony Richardson. And I mean, you look at stuff like things that have happened with Lamar Jackson, with Cam Newton, various injuries that have happened to Josh Allen, to Kyler Murray. When you're looking at the more mobile quarterbacks throughout the league, there's just going to be a higher risk for injury. So obviously you don't want a quarterback that has to leave 4 out of the first 5 games, but at the same time, the injuries are going to happen. And I'm going to beat this into the ground, and I'm going to stay on this side until proven otherwise and get a bigger sample size. I do not think Anthony Richardson is injury prone. You look at the 2 major injuries he had this year was the concussion. I mean, his head bounced off the turf. That's going to happen to anybody.
So did Mo Alley Cox's.
Yeah, Mo Alley Cox, his head bounced off the turf and he had a concussion. When you have a 270-pound man, he didn't even pile drive Anthony Richardson, but he landed on Anthony Richardson's shoulder down into the ground. I mean, you're likely going to have an injury from that. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So want to highlight this super chat from Patrick, another $5 super chat from the legend himself. Patrick says they should take this Richardson injury assessment very conservatively. Look what happened with Taylor when they rushed him back too soon last year. And this kind of builds on my point that I was getting ready to talk about, Patrick. I wasn't going to say Taylor, but I was going to say another quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts don't want to repeat the same thing that happened with Andrew Luck, pushing him through an injury, allowing him to play on an injury and end up making it worse. And then it ruins a fantastic, a young quarterback who has potential beyond anything that we've ever seen.
Well
and
said.
it ruins his career. The Colts are going to be very conservative with this. They're going to use the lessons that they learned from the Andrew Luck saga, and they're not going to repeat it. From what they have seen from Anthony Richardson, and I've got this on good authority, this team is very happy and is ecstatic with what they have seen from Anthony Richardson, both on and off the field inside that building. They are going to do everything possible to not mess this up. They do not want what happened to Andrew Luck to happen to Anthony Richardson. And we've already seen Shane Steichen allude to this week, that Anthony Richardson's longevity and his long-term health are the priority here.
Yep.
Because what have we been talking about for months? This has never been about the 2023 season. Yes, you want Anthony Richardson out there getting reps, learning and on the fly, and getting that invaluable experience at the quarterback position. But at the same time, the Colts, I know Colts fans maybe want to hold out a little bit of hope. The Colts are not Super Bowl contenders this year. Unlikely that they're going to even make the playoffs. They might sneak in to the playoffs. But
that's a huge win if they do. I mean,
exactly, it would be. They might sneak in, but when you look at the teams atop the AFC, the Colts cannot compete with them right now. And that's just a matter of fact. It's not about the 2023 season. It's about 2024, 2025, and beyond. You want to make sure Anthony Richardson's shoulder is healed up and he is in the best possible shape so he can have a very long and a very prosperous career with the Indianapolis Colts. And if that means getting the surgery and sitting out for the rest of the 2023 season, for a guy that covers the team on a day-to-day basis, go for it, because Colts football is a lot more exciting and a lot more fun to talk about when number 5 is out there. And we've already seen that through the first 5 weeks of the season. And hopefully we get to watch this young man absolutely dominate for the Indianapolis Colts for years to come. So, Patrick, thank you so much for getting me riled up to go on a rant with your super chat here. I really do appreciate it. Anything else to add on that, Drake? Sorry, I took up probably 45 minutes of our show talking about that.
No, you're good. Hey, it's all about the future of your franchise signal caller. Okay. And the Colts have never had a guy like Richardson this young. They got a lot of years with him. They're not going to jeopardize it in his first year just because he had some shoulder injuries.
Exactly. Let's talk about some other before we'll put a bow on the Richardson injury talk for at least today. And Drake, after what you've seen from this weekend and what the Colts did with the Jaguars with Gardner Minshew in there, do you have concerns for this Colts team moving forward without Richardson? Again, we kind of just talked about it's not really about this year, but are there any concerns for this team without Richardson moving forward?
I think there's concerns if you don't hit, because we saw when they opened up the playbook in the second half and when they started throwing when they were downfield. I know Jacksonville was probably a little more lax because they had the lead, but they started to make some things happen. I think that they need to throw the ball more downfield. I think that they need to try to run to the outside the next time they encounter so many guys in the box like that. But at the end of the day, yes, to a degree you are, because he's not good at recognizing blitzes. Okay. And he does not deal with pressure. All quarterbacks are less accurate when they have pressure, but Minshew seems to really deal with it badly. But at the end of the day, I do think that he can still get some wins. And I think that over this stretch, if or when Richardson returns, or if he doesn't, even if Minshew goes the rest of the season, I think you could still be confident that there's a good chance there's 7, 8, maybe even 9 wins.
And you know what? That would be a success for the Indianapolis Colts this season. Yeah. So let's look at the other injuries here to talk about. Obviously, Alec Pierce left the game yesterday dealing with a shoulder injury. Shane Steichen said that he's going to continue to monitor that as the week goes on. It doesn't seem like it's too serious where he could miss a lot of time, but I definitely think that maybe next week is in play for him to possibly miss. We're just going to have to see. But I mean, it seemed like Alec Pierce was much more involved with the game plan yesterday, and was making plays when he was given the opportunity. So you hope Alec Pierce doesn't miss time, and also you want Alec Pierce to be able to continue to build on that performance. Colts also don't really have much depth behind Alec Pierce either.
Yeah, and one thing that's not really talked about with Alec Pierce is he's incredibly tough. So if he can go, and if there's a chance he can go, he's going to be out there against the Browns.
Exactly. Stats Matt coming in with the super chat. Did I tell him to ask this question and throw in a super chat? Maybe the world will never know. But Stats Matt, thank you so much, buddy, for the super chat. He says, "Where's the Shaq talk?" And Patrick, we're not talking about Shaquille O'Neal, buddy. But yeah, Drake. I mean, let's touch on it here. Shaq Leonard, 7 tackles yesterday. I noticed it pretty easily. You saw Shaq flying around the field. You saw him look a lot quicker. You saw him hitting the holes faster. Definitely being able to chase down guys on the perimeter better. You didn't see the energy that you normally see from a Shaq Leonard, but again, you probably won't see that when the Colts are down 31-6 either, when they're getting their butts kicked. That's not really what you want to see is your defensive leader not taking things seriously or more celebrating when there really isn't much to celebrate. But yesterday was the best I have seen Shaq Leonard look in a long time. And not only from just a stat standpoint, which I think he had his best statistical game of the season, but just how he moved around that football field. Though the way he was hitting the holes, the way he was being able to chase defenders down, moving sideline to sideline, it almost looked like he had that explosiveness back, Drake, that we've become so accustomed to seeing from Shaq Leonard over the years.
Yeah, and you're not going to generally see an NFL player celebrating when they're down 20 plus points.
Exactly.
After a big play, you'd be like, "Sit the hell down, pal."
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, it's like you put out on X. He had looked better than he had looked all season. You just didn't notice it because it was an utter routing. But hey, it makes you so excited because Shaq Leonard is still the heartbeat of this defense, and him and Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed all 100%, all playing at once. Man, that's like a top 5 linebacking group.
And the groin looked like it was at full strength. Shout out to Patrick there for that one. But no, it didn't look like the groin injury had any hindrance on Shaquille Leonard yesterday. And remember what Gus Bradley said. They want to continually try to ramp up Shaq Leonard, that hopefully by the time they get to November, you're seeing the Shaq Leonard of old, because you guys got to remember this was a nerve injury and they're tricky things. So it's not going to be an all or nothing thing, while all of a sudden he's like, oh, back to full strength. It's going to take some time. But we saw his numbers go up. We saw Shaq Leonard play a considerable amount more snaps than EJ Speed yesterday, which they've more been splitting the snaps for most of the season. Shaq Leonard was in there a lot more yesterday. Really good sign for the all-pro linebacker. And when he's playing at his best, this Colts defense just jumps up a completely another level in what they are capable to do. So Stats Matt, really thank you for the super chat, buddy, allowing us to talk about Shaq Leonard here. You're an absolute real one. So let's wrap up the injuries, Drake. Kylan Granson popped up on the injury report today. Shane Steichen said that he had concussion-like symptoms after the game, and he is now in the concussion protocol. Tough, because Kylan Granson has been one of the bright spots this season. I think he's had his best season to date. Definitely has helped this receiving game. And when more teams are going to be putting pressure on the Colts to beat them through the air, they need all the weapons they can get. And Kylan Granson can certainly help this Colts team move down the field.
Yeah, and he was second on the team yesterday in receiving yards with 67. A lot of people didn't notice that, but yeah, right now for the entire season, I mean, I think that he's looked better than he has looked in his entire career. He's fitting exactly what Shane Steichen wants to do, but you just hope he can recover quickly because, man, he's a real asset to the offense.
And if Kylan Granson can't go this week, Will Mallory probably steps up into that Kylan Granson role and gets more stops. But we'll have to see how he progresses through the protocol. One more that I didn't put on our list here, but is worth talking about. Braden Smith. Braden Smith suffered a hip injury last week in practice. It sounds like it's more of a week-to-week injury. The Colts are still trying to evaluate it and see where he is at. But if Braden Smith is out for a few weeks or considerable amount of time, puts a lot of pressure on the rookie Blake Freeland, who played well yesterday. I thought played probably his best game of his young career, but he's still, Braden Smith is quite a few levels above Blake Freeland at this time.
I guess if there was one situation that's positive about all of this is that Blake Freeland had to start against Aaron Donald, and he has just been thrown right into the fire and showed some promise. But you definitely, in this very moment, if you're the Colts, you want Braden Smith out there instead.
Kind of what Bernard Ryman had to go through last year, just he was thrown into the fire, and Chris Ballard said, he either had to swim or sink, and it certainly helped Bernard Ryman. I know he didn't have a very good rep yesterday with Josh Allen that one time, but the rest of the game, you really didn't hear Bernard Ryman's name. So, and even the best tackles are bound to slip up against some of the greatest pass rushers in the game. So, Drake, let's wrap this up with our Colts player of the game picks. Mine might surprise you guys a little bit, but I'm going to go with a guy that pretty much carried the offense yesterday, Michael Pittman Jr. Despite the consistent double teams yesterday, he ended up with 9 catches for 109 yards. If Gardner Minshew doesn't sail a few of those passes, he probably ends up with close to 130, 140 yards. If Gardner Minshew puts the ball in the right spot and gives Pittman a chance, he probably ends up with another touchdown as well. Michael Pittman does not give enough credit for what he has had to endure with the Indianapolis Colts and all of the terrible quarterbacks that he has had to throw his way, but he still goes out there and fights and does his best to lead this Colts team. So shout out to Michael Pittman. Thought he played great yesterday. He's my Colts player of the game.
Yeah, 7 quarterbacks in his career already. So give Michael Pittman a little bit of slack, everybody. Juju Brents. All right, he's going to take the player of the game for me. 7 tackles, 2 pass defenses, an interception. Continues to play at a high level. Continues to utilize that athleticism. This dude, if he keeps on the trajectory he's already been on in his limited sample size, I think he's going to be a freak as a corner and athletically.
Yeah, Juju Brent's a great pick. I kind of left that one up there on a silver platter for you, Drake.
You did.
Yeah, both those guys, great picks for Colts player of the game, and I think we're going to be seeing both those guys, both Michael Pittman Jr. and Juju Brents. We're going to be seeing a lot of those performances on Colts player of the game. Patrick, you absolute menace in the chat, just wiling out here, and that's how we're going to end our show for this evening, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in this evening. Thanks for sticking out with us for our technical difficulties before we came on live. Want to give a special shout out to all of our super chats for this evening. Patrick, Shaheen, Sarah, my beautiful wife Danielle, and Stats Matt. Thank you so much for your super chats and everybody else that tuned in tonight and joined us to talk Colts football on a somber Monday as the Colts drop another one in Jacksonville. But it's still a long season. A lot of football left to be played, and the Colts journey certainly is not over. If you haven't done so already, please go follow us on all of our social medias, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow at Colts on FN on X and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, whenever Shaq goes live with the Saddle Up Show, so you never miss an episode. Still closing in on 2,000 subscribers. We're very, very close, so make sure you subscribe and also hit that like button on the video as well. Don't say that enough, but it definitely helps us in the algorithm. And if you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Drake, I know you've been writing away and pushing out content on horseshoehuddle.com. What can the people go check out that you've written?
So I just released the 3 good, 3 bad from the loss to the Jaguars, and then one that I have upcoming. A little outside the box thought, but it's what is the Colts' offensive identity with Gardner Minshew after this loss?
That's going to be a fun one. So make sure you go check those out. For myself, wrote a piece about the report of Anthony Richardson and the Colts considering season-ending surgery on that right shoulder. So I dove into all the specifics of that. Then I also talked about Gardner Minshew and how he took full responsibility and took accountability for that loss yesterday. Also dive into why the Colts couldn't get things going on the ground. So make sure you check that out and all the great writing that is done on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake on X at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Thursday night to get you ready for Colts Browns on my anniversary weekend. So taking the wife down there to Indy where we got engaged. She was thrilled that our anniversary is going to be spent going to a Colts game. That was definitely sarcasm. So we're making a fun weekend out of it down in Indy. But it's gonna be a fun weekend, and it's gonna be a fun contest for the Indianapolis Colts going up against the Browns. Gonna be a dogfight, and I think this Colts defense is ready to kind of show that they should be talked about as well. Colts offense definitely wants to bounce back as well. Patrick with his final super chat of the evening for diapers, open bar, and Mrs. Moore's
everybody
road trip. We really do appreciate you, Patrick, just absolutely funding our lives here through the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. You're an absolute legend, Patrick. Thank you so much. So for Drake, I'm Andrew. Thank you so much, Colts Nation, for following along with us, and we'll be back Thursday night to talk more Colts football with you. We'll be seeing you then.